Hi, I just want to preface this video by saying I'm not a professional by any means. I started drawing when I was little and started making manga for fun a couple months ago, but I have learned a thing or two over the time that I've spent practicing and doing what I enjoy, and I wanted to share it with you guys. I also had multiple people request something like this, so this will be my first of many videos demonstrating my process and how things come to be within my manga and other forms of art. Another quick misconception that people make is that they need to be artistically inclined in order to make their own characters or manga, and that's simply not true. Anyways, there's quite a bit to cover, so let's just get straight into the creative process. For starters, I'm going to go over the basic concepts and steps that I've planned out for this video. So the four main ideas I'm going to be covering are the idea, the setup, the design, and the completion. Each of these steps are extremely crucial in order to properly create your own character, and I'm going to do my very best to explain them in depth for you guys, starting with the idea. Coming up with the idea is probably the easiest portion for some people, but could also be the hardest for others. It's the same reason that some manga authors have an artist do the actual artwork of the series, whilst they just write the storyline. It's also the same reason that most musicians nowadays have a ghostwriter in order for them to create a good song without needing the hassle of coming up with the concept. Of course, this doesn't apply to everyone, but don't feel like you're falling behind if you have trouble coming up with the idea. Honestly, most of my ideas come from things like that I personally enjoy or am a fan of. That could be video games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, or movies like Donnie Darko and Memento. All these things give us ideas and inspire us to create our own thing. Originality kind of doesn't exist anymore, and some things will always just be inspired by another or similar to others, and that's okay. Most of your guys' favorite manga or anime were most likely inspired by other shows or manga that other artists made. So just take your own and find something you like and use it to your advantage. Since I wanted to show a step-by-step on how I make a character, I decided to do exactly that for this video by designing a brand new character from scratch. What I came up with is this young man with confidence and a bit of arrogance. I also want it to be that character is always keeping himself upkept and tidy, but can't afford wasting his time to get a haircut, as he's too busy. I also wanted the character to resemble Nishio Nishiki from Tokyo Ghoul, as he portrays himself in such an interesting way and also resembles a scrawny, nerdy character. Now that I've found my ideas and inspiration, it was time to start the next step. The setup. I planned out this portion of the video to be super easy to follow and understand, but if there's anything else you guys would like to know, please just comment and ask. I've literally replied to every single comment I've ever gotten since I created this channel, so don't be shy. Planning out the character design is one of the most enjoyable portions of the process in my opinion. What I like to do is basically piece the character together like a puzzle, and choose each aspect according to what I want them to resemble or look like. For starters, I usually draw out multiple different head shapes and chin ideas. I started with the more stylized head shapes and then moved on to the more realistic and human-like ones. I tend to find myself enjoying the more semi-realistic shapes, as it makes the character more detailed and less flat when designing them. But the standard is the first option that I put on screen. Head shapes are usually formed in ways that are super easy to recognize, as they consistently resemble another type of shape, whether it's rounder like a circle or pointy like a triangle. These head shapes can change the entire feeling of your character, as well as how old they may appear. Usually when you're drawing younger characters, rounder shapes appear more childlike and also feminine, rather than harsher square-like head shapes, which appear more sharp and masculine. Obviously these concepts aren't always going to follow those guidelines, but it's a good idea to keep in mind when creating the character. After choosing your favorite, you could start to move on to the body type of the character. I decided to draw in 3 male body shapes, as the character I'm creating happens to be male, but the process is similar for a female body type as well. Honestly, my main suggestion is to start to look up different reference images of body types, and find which one you like the most, and use that as the reference point when creating these concepts. I wanted to keep things simple and the anime/manga norm, so I drew in a skinny body, a standard one, and a more muscular looking one. Even if you aren't going to be using each of these types, you should still use this as an opportunity to practice anatomy and proportions. Also, it'll kind of help out with the next step. Once you've chosen the head shape and the body type, you're basically done with the anatomy of your character. So I usually just drag both of them onto another tab and attach them together like a Lego set, and boom, you've got a body. Something seems a little off though, cause right now my character kinda looks like an alien. And I guess that would be a good thing if your concept was an alien character, but mine isn't, so why exactly is that? Well, that's because he doesn't have hair or eyes, so let's fix that. Choosing a hairstyle is one of the most fun parts of creating a character in my opinion, because I think hair can mean a lot of things, and it can also be one of the most important/recognizable features of a character. For example, I'm sure you can guess who these characters are just by their haircuts. Anyways, depending on how detailed or simplistic you want the hairstyle to be, will either make the character's design more complex and difficult to draw, or also easier to render throughout a story and/or manga in the long run. The hairstyle could also be a defining characteristic of the character, like Rapunzel or Medusa, where they use their hair to tell a story. In my case, I just want a messy longish hairstyle that I had planned originally, so I threw out some designs and picked the one I think suits my idea best. The next step is the eyes, but I think it's safe to say that our character needs some clothes, which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Project Orochi. They're a streetwear clothing brand that mainly focuses on creating beautiful designs that have subtle nods to video games and anime without it being like cringe or weird. Personally, I really love their Elden Ring and Dark Souls themed collections because those happen to be things that inspire me artistically. So in my opinion, having awesome looking merch that captures that creativity is so sick. Not only do they have stuff that is video game inspired, but they also just make nice quality, good looking clothing that has their own original concepts and designs. I really found myself gravitating towards the Princess Mononoke inspired t-shirt, along with the Consort hoodie. Dude, just look at this thing. Anyways, I think you guys should check them out on Instagram and also in the description below. They even have free shipping to North America, so that's pretty awesome, so you can get something in time for the holidays. You can also use code HALIO for a 10% discount at checkout, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, thanks Project Orochi for sponsoring, and let's get back to the creative process. Choosing an eye shape is just as important as the hairstyle in my opinion. That's mainly because eyes can convey their own message and tell a story without needing any words. Eyes can also simply depict whether a character is sad, happy, emotionless, angry, etc. You get the point. So choosing the right set of eyes can make or break the concept you wish to capture with your character. Another important aspect is that wider set eyes can appear more younger and more happy, or even excited, whilst more stern, low set eyes can appear more older, nonchalant, or moody. Honestly, a good mix of the two is usually the standard for an MC, but for my character in particular, I really like the more like stern, pointed eyes look, which gives him a more intense stare and methodical expression. Once you've chosen the eyes, you've officially completed the setup portion of the character. To prove you're watching along and trusting the process, comment something like magic marker so you can confuse the other people that skipped to the end and didn't learn anything. Once you've decided on your concept and are ready to begin the design step, you can start by creating multiple angles and expressions of your character. These don't really need to be perfect, as you're simply testing the waters to see what you do and don't like about the design. So honestly, now is kind of like the perfect time to fix or change things you don't find appealing with your idea. I started by sketching in a 3/4 profile of the character and fixed it as I went along to properly capture the look that I was going for. It's important to have a reference of each angle of the character's face, since you don't want to lose the similarities and keep things as accurate and consistent as possible. This was an early mistake that I made when I was starting my manga creating process. As I kept drawing the same character over and over, they would start to look a little bit different from panel to panel because I didn't have a proper reference sheet. After completing the 3/4 view, I moved on to a front-facing profile shot of the character along with a side profile view. All these angles are super necessary and important, so please try your best at not skipping over this step, even if it seems tedious or bothersome. As you start to draw these things, you'll really start to see your design come together as you complete the concept sheet. After finishing these 3 profile shots, I decided to do a quick sketch of the character with a more manga-styled brush, as well as line art. I really love the sketchy look of this drawing, and it really puts into perspective how you would appear in a story that I would create. Once you've completed your concept sheet, you're on to the final step, the completion. Now you may be wondering, how exactly does one finalize their character creation? Well, in the art community, it's kind of a thing everyone does actually. Create fan art of your own character. Once you could finally bring it to life with everything you decided on and chose, it's officially a character concept design. So choose a good reference pose and get to work bringing that character of yours to life. I'm going to be showing you guys step by step how I created my own fan art of my character, I guess. So here we go. First, I started with probably the roughest sketch I've ever made in my entire life, just to get an idea of the positioning and posing of my character. Yeah, this thing is pretty, now that I hear myself speak, I actually never chose a name for this guy, so I'll just leave that up to you guys. Anyways, I started with the rough sketch and then moved on to the more detailed line art right away. I knew this was going to be a long process since I was not only planning on drawing a full shot of my character, but also fully planned on coloring and rendering them entirely too. So I guess this is just bonus content and you'll see how I color things. Anyways, when starting the line art I mainly focused on getting the head shape right. I wanted it to match the shape I had chosen during my design process, and so I kept adjusting it until it looked correct to the original. I then started to draw in his nose and eyes, and took my time with adjusting things where it felt necessary. I wanted his expression to be cocky and rude, as he was in a hurry to get to work and was rushing past our camera/viewpoint. I think I properly captured the expression since I feel a bit offended by his look, and while I was honestly drawing this I felt judged. I then added in his square shaped glasses and continued with the shaping of his messy hairstyle. After adding in the hair and fixing up whatever changes to his face were sticking out to me, I started to move on to his collar and began drawing in his button-up shirt and tie. I knew that I wanted his tie blowing in the wind as he was in a bit of a rush, and I couldn't find any reference images, so I used the good old-fashioned forbidden art technique, my imagination. It actually turned out pretty good, and it looked exactly as I wanted it to, so I was pleased with my brain for doing such a good job. I then continued with the arm/sleeve texturing. I always have trouble with clothing folds and properly capturing how the fabrics bend and curl on itself, but I pushed through. I used a lot of references and achieved what I was going for, so I became pretty pleased with it. I then added the rest of his shirt along with pants, which later got cut from the drawing. I then added in his hand holding up the suit jacket as he's quickly putting it over his arm. And honestly, I was super happy with the concept starting to come together, and I started fixing the line art and adding line depth by cleaning up any areas that I may have rushed over or didn't realize that I had a mistake on. I then took a bit of a small break and tried figuring out how I wanted to render the drawing. I ended up just deciding on a simple anime-styled look and was planning on using cell shading to complete the final art piece. To start this off, I started by coloring in and adding in the base colors of each section of the character. The easiest way to do this is by using the lasso tool and just hovering over each section and then filling it in. I first began coloring the hair since I wasn't going too crazy with it. I then moved on to the more detailed shading and coloring of his face by shading the glasses to appear more tinted and shiny. I then continued shading his skin around his face with a more saturated, darker tint to the original skin tone I had chosen. I then colored his hand in with the same method, and then moved on to the shading for his clothing, and oh boy do I hate shading clothing in all the folds. I think this might be my best attempt at it though, so I'm insanely proud of how it turned out. After adding in the shading and lighting all over his shirt and suit jacket, I moved on to coloring the actual line art itself. I see this method used a lot by different artists, and I really fell in love with how it looks. I matched the areas of the coloring to the line art's color, and the way I chose what color to use was simple. I basically just color picked the area that I wished to color the line art with and moved it to a darker tone, and it really started to piece everything together. It also just makes the lines less harsh on the eyes and gives the character more accurate to realistic coloring since nobody's walking around outside with an outline. I then added in some harsher lighting to his shoulder and hair, and was basically done with the concept art. I just wanted to add a nice bright reddish pink block in the background to make the character's colors stand out from the white, and it looked awesome. I was honestly really pleased with this entire process, and I'm going to post the full quality image on Patreon, which is going to be linked down in the description below. I was honestly really pleased with this entire process, and I think it's safe to say that these following steps can lead you to creating your own character. Thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in keeping up to date with new videos in our community, follow me on Twitter and Patreon. It's going to be linked down below in the description. And if this video helped you out and you aren't subscribed, please do it. My goal is to hit 10k subs, so anything helps, and I appreciate all the support. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.